2, 14 through 17, would you call that like your band's mission statement?
Yeah, I would, actually. Just James 2 in particular is so incredibly dear to my heart. Basically, I was working in the cigar industry for about 3.5 years or so. I had gotten married, was making a really good income, but I was working, 50 hours a week, basically trying to just climb the corporate ladder, if you will. And I was doing the band on weekends. It was just kind of more of a for fun thing. The band got to a point where we had a decision to make on it, and it was either I was going to walk away from it or I was going to run at it full speed. I believed in Jesus Christ. I was a Christian then, but I was so afraid. I was so scared to hold on to this world. I did not want to let go of the tangible of this world, the money and a car and a home and all of these things that the world tells us to chase. Basically, I told my wife on a drive home from this meeting with my band that I was going to quit. If you knew my wife, I could have bet any amount of money she would have looked at me and said, "Well, that's really great. You did it was a lot of fun for a while it lasted, and now we'll have more time together, and it's just we can move on to the new chapter of our lives." But that's not what she said. She looked at me and she said, "You're making decisions without talking to God," and it scared me because God was speaking directly through her. And
wow.
I went home and decided to fast for a full week over this, and it's something I'd never done before. Fasting to me was something that crazy people did, and it just didn't make sense to me. But I have some really amazing friends in my life that are just really spiritually just so close to God, and they just blessed me with it. And so I started to fast. I got really frustrated because that's the point of fasting is you instead of food, you rely on God, and it creates an amazing sphere of just one-on-one with God. And basically, when I was just at the peak of my frustration and I just finally let go, I was staring at my Bible, hoping, and for days I was trying to get something from Him. And right as I let go, James 2 was right in front of me, and it was right at me. And it was just like, so basically in a week's time, I went from preparing to tell my band I was going to leave to going into my office that Monday morning and telling them that I was leaving and not coming back.
Wow.
So that's really why it's a mission statement for us, because it really is, you look at it, there's no way around it. It's there. We had this one kid at this one shot. I'm trying to remember where it was. I believe it was Indiana. He came up to our merch table, and he just was really quiet and timid, and you could just tell, like, he just really unsure of himself. And I reached out my hand, and I said, "Hi, I'm Donny," and I said, "So you enjoying the show?" And, we hadn't played yet, and he said, "Yeah," he said, "but I'm not supposed to be here." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And this was a Christian show, this particular show. He said, "Well, my dad told me he didn't want me to come out and come see these bands because he doesn't believe that Christian bands should scream." And I said, "So how did you get here?" He goes, "I snuck out my window." And I said, that's really not a very good thing to do. I said, I understand what you're going through, but you really, and he cut me off and he said, "You don't understand, like, my dad doesn't listen to me." And so I just kind of was fumbling for words at this point. I just wasn't prepared, and I just had a quick prayer in my head, 2 seconds, and God just completely just clicked in my head, and I reached over to our CDs and I handed him one. I said, "I want you to do me a favor." I said, "I want you to go home with this CD. I want you to sit down with your dad. I want you to tell him that you snuck out. And I want you to hand him the CD. I want you to tell him that the singer of this band, which was me, Donny, told him to give it to you first and for him to listen to it first because God commands you to respect your father, and that if he doesn't want you to have it, to throw it out." He went home, but we got it on our MySpace about a week later that his dad came back and gave him the CD, and ever since his dad's been more open to listening to heavier music. But just simple things like that, I feel like, that are sometimes, Christ is just, he's so powerful, and just that respect, maybe that was all that was needed, was that mutual respect of one another and that father and that son's relationship, but it moved me so hard.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, it's really a pretty incredible situation, but man, you can't believe how many. I've got so many things going through my head right now about just all these things that have happened at all these shows. Just kids that are hurting, and they just need to know who Jesus Christ is, and more importantly, they need to be treated with respect and as people and as peers. And I think sometimes when that happens, Christ can really move.
For sure, man. For sure.
Check out the rest of the Anvil and the Hammer interview with Donny Hardy from I Am Alpha and Omega, free on iTunes or podcast.anvilandthehammer.com.